Hello ladies, gentlemen, and my NB friends, and welcome back to the Keldeanne channel. I'm your host, Keldeanne, and we are solemnly gathered here today to talk about Persona 3 yet again. So I'll just state now up front that I do not intend to include any story spoilers for the game at all. I may reference a few characters, dates, or groups, but I will not spoil the plot or events that take place in the story. Secondly, this game is still Persona 3, and I've already reviewed Persona 3 and Persona 3 Portable on this channel in the past. Instead of retreading points I've already made or just going over the fine details of the game or genre, I will instead do what I did in my Portable review and frame this video as a follow-up. I'm going to mention the changes in this version of the game and explain how it affects the experience overall and give my opinion on it. I am going to hope that you have either played Persona 3, FES, or Portable, or that you have seen my previous videos on those games. If you haven't, that's okay, but you really should. Also, if you intend to go back and watch my Persona 3 videos, I will warn you that my first one covering FES, I did include story spoilers. So, if you don't want spoilers, don't watch it, I suppose. Finally, the boring disclaimers are out of the way. Now we can start this video off proper. So hello everyone that stuck around. Today we're talking about Persona 3 Reload, the remake that everyone made their opinions about before it even came out. Going on, everyone wanted this to be a quote, definitive version of Persona 3, as the versions available have some pretty stark differences between them. Like a rational person, I just waited until I played the game before I made any opinions on it one way or another. And yikes. Don't get me wrong, the game is really good. It's the third verse, same as the first. And second. Yeah, it's still Persona 3, a game I'm on record saying is one of my favorites of all time. This game is great, I enjoy it. That said, while I enjoy this game, it is definitely my least favorite version of Persona 3, and that's really saying something. Like, just putting that line in the script really made me reconsider my life because there's a lot to love about the game. I think the most disappointing part of the game for a lot of people is that it clearly isn't the definitive version that people wanted. The problem for me is that it's not the answer to a lot of the criticisms that I really had about either of the previous versions. Hey! That's the title. Hey! That's a pun. Aren't I clever? It does some things much better, and technically speaking, it's great. However, this game has some old problems, plenty of new problems, and just confusing elements that I cannot rationalize the thought process behind. All of that said, let's take a proper look at Persona 3 Reload, a remarkably good, bad, confusing mess of a fun game that is one of my favorites. Let's start with what we always do, the gameplay. The dungeon crawling of this game is buttery smooth and quick. Grinding in Tartarus has always been fun for me. No, I'm not psychotic. Without a doubt, this is the absolute best that Tartarus exploration has been. Everything is beautiful. There is a real incentive to explore the floors for items, random special chests, and a litany of random additions. It's really engaging, and every new area is a genuine improvement over the previous title's attempts. In most regards. A lot of exploration in Tartarus, whether it be locked chests that appear regularly, restoring SP at the clock, or leveling up your unused teammates, can be done with a new item called Twilight Fragments. These are found in the overworld, obtained via annoying fetch quests, but also obtained by doing social links. Beyond the thin layer of unlocking personas and getting a Persona EXP boost at Fusion, you now have an exploration incentive behind completing social links. You get these fragments for ranking them up, not just for completing them. It's really cool and works to balance out the different parts of the game to make them all play into one another. Continuing with that, we really need to talk about Theurgy. Theurgy are these special attacks that your teammates get access to by playing their intended role in combat. Oftentimes it's a really strong attack that negates any sort of status for the used element. Whether the enemy blocks, reflects, or absorbs the element, the Theurgy attack will still go through. On one hand, I think it's good as it keeps the teammate's strong skills useful against certain enemies you might not have a plan for. On the other hand, I feel like it can make encounters piss easy. Like imagine the strategy you could try to milk out of a scenario where your strongest attack is just negated and you have to work around it. That'd be really cool. Slight criticism out of the way, I really do like their inclusion. I think it's a much better implementation of the Showtime feature from Persona 5 Royal, a special attack with a method of fast charging it with a stated effect. I mentioned Theurgy here because it, too, feeds into the life sim aspect of the game. Something added to Reload are entirely new character events at the dorm. You can watch TV with someone, cook with them, you know, the fun stuff. Each event gives a little glimpse into the character, and I think it's really cute and breathes life into the evening, whereas Fest and Portable really lacked in evening activities. Anyways, if you do enough of these events with the same people, that person unlocks a new Theurgy passive. At the start of battle, they provide a buff to help get an edge. I think this is also a welcome addition and helps the player get more invested in the characters and seemingly pointless events, as they provide a clear bonus to the other half of the gameplay. It's very simple, yet very effective. There is one negative about Theurgy that I must state. The player character's Theurgy are fusion skills. Fusion skills have been locked behind an in-game power meter instead of having a clear cost and risks associated with it. Like I said in my initial Persona 3 review, I love fusion skills. They're so cool and well executed in that game. Here in Reload though, they almost give the same effect. They're unlocked by getting the personas necessary logged in the compendium. They don't have to be in your current persona stock, which can be a plus in the grinding regard, but also negates one of the risks associated with them. After Portable, I assumed anything could be an improvement over making them bloody items. I mean, this is a huge improvement over that, but they still don't hit nearly as well as they did in Fest. Earlier I mentioned annoying fetch quests. That's right, motherfucker. Tartarus requests are back. Yeah! I hate these so much. In this game, they're more manageable. Like, the floors aren't as far or tedious to traverse, but they're just unnecessary. Like, why do you people keep coming here? Stay the hell away. What are you doing? I dislike these rescues for every reason I dislike them in Portable. They're tedious, come late in moon cycles, offer little rewards, are often put in low-leveled floors so every shadow just runs away from you anyways, and social link characters can be saved as well. Like, seriously, these come so late in the moon cycles. Do people just not do the dungeon crawling? Half the time I'm too overpowered for these floors I'm running through. This isn't fun. Who was this designed for? Why was this implemented? Beyond that though, we do have a couple more improvements that were made, that while they may seem like small changes, actually have a sizable impact on the dungeon crawling. The tiring mechanic has been removed entirely. No longer will your party be too tired to continue in Tartarus or too tired to return to Tartarus. This allows for much more freedom in grinding and progression, and doesn't impose more limits on what you can actually do with your time. Again, it may seem small, but it's actually a really good change. Another change is how shuffle time works. That's right, the absolute dog negotiation system from Persona 5 is gone, and now we have a system very similar to Persona 4. At first I'd say it's not as busted as Golden Shuffle Time, but that really isn't the case. If you grind enough in Tartarus, you do become overpowered very quickly, which we will get to, though I like this system more than the original Persona 3's. It adds a little extra layer to your choices, and you're rewarded for the longer you go on. It's actually quite neat. I alluded to it, so let's just get it out of the way. The difficulty. I'm on record saying that Persona 3 Fest is a challenging game. Part of that is due to RNG nonsense, the other part is due to the game just being somewhat difficult in its own right. Portable can be easy, but it does have spikes here and there. What about Reload? Does Reload carry the difficulty tradition of its predecessors? No. This game is piss easy. Not much to be said here really. In fact, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. The more useful mechanics you add that mix well with the core gameplay, the game becomes easier as you're opening up the player to more strategies and exploits. I don't fault the game for adding new things like Theurgy, Shift, or other mechanics like that. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the Shift mechanic. Oh well. My point is that the game should ideally adjust for these new mechanics and scale with the player's mechanical progression. Does it? No, it doesn't. Remember what I said about the rescue request being placed on floors where the shadows run away from you? Case in point, this court is adjourned. The game isn't Persona 5 Royal easy, but it's still easier than the other versions of Persona 3, Portable included. That wasn't unexpected or anything, it's just worth pointing out in my opinion. Okay Kira, what is this shift mechanic, I hear you ask? Well, do you remember the baton pass? It's basically that, only without the inherent buffs. This does make the combat flow very smoothly, and most encounters are very fun to link up and execute perfectly. I think the shift is a clear improvement over the baton pass system, and I hope to see it become a bit of a mainstay for the series. Does this make the game easier? Yeah, one of many contributing factors, but if you're going to include a function like this, I think this is the best way to include it. Speaking of difficult, remember Menad? The extra 10 floor block that you unlocked at the end of Persona 3? Yeah, well fuck you! Menad is now designated to these doors that will randomly appear throughout Tartarus. If you go to a new floor, there's a chance that a Menad door will be there. These doors house mini-bosses? When I say mini-bosses, I mean basically enemies that are no better than the strong enemies on the floor you're currently on. The decision to cut the Manad section from the game is very odd in my opinion. Like, why remove this optional block that you earn through playing the game? It was a bonus for overcoming one of the most difficult things you could do up to that point. Reach the top of Tartarus and defeat the optional Reaper boss. The replacement is fine, I suppose. It gives good EXP, is more challenging than the common enemies, and has good loot inside. But I have to ask, why don't they just scale the difficulty accordingly? If they cut Manad because it doesn't fit their intended difficulty curve and most players would be turned off by it, then fine. But I've completed every door I've seen. You know, I play the actual game. Most of these bosses aren't even hard. They can repeat in the same set of floors, and if you do grind them like a sane person, you're overpowered for the normal enemies. Again, what the hell is this difficulty curve? Who is this made for? A very bizarre addition to the game comes in the form of shadow status ailments. This isn't anything new in the sense, but certain shadows in the overworld have status effects that will alter their pathing behavior in Tartarus. This part is new, and it ultimately makes them easier to dodge, and also makes them easier to fight in battle. Why was this added? This is one of those confusing elements I mentioned earlier. It's just odd and doesn't add anything worthwhile to the game. Like, wow, look at this dude. Well, that's all I have for the general gameplay. I'd say it's a mostly fine, modernized take on the original, with some odd and tedious choices and port difficulty scaling. Again, it's not as bad as Persona 5, but not as good as one might hope. Still, you know, it's pretty good. Next, let's talk about the characters. Don't worry, I'll keep this part brief. We have new voice actors. Characters like Fuka and Ken, the two characters with easily the worst English VAs, have been given entirely new life with voices that not only sound natural, but suit them perfectly. Another character with truly great English VA is Mitsuru. Her original was good, but her new one does a stellar job, and I'd argue is just as good if not better at filling the part. Makoto's voice actor, while being a hilarious shitposter on Twitter, also does a truly remarkable job at playing the part. He puts in 110% and I feel it suits Makoto much better. All the rest, while being good for the most part, aren't great. Very few feel like they're actual characters, and some don't fit the part in my opinion. Junpei, Aigis, and especially Akihiko all sound like impersonators instead of their actual characters. Speaking of impersonating characters, we need to talk about how this game butchers characters. Any and all new scenes and characterization for characters like Akihiko, Mitsuru, Aigis, Junpei, they all drop the ball hard. These are no longer our characters. Akihiko isn't himself, he is now only about training and protein. Why? Because of a singular throwaway line in the original game. Everyone is intimidated by Mitsuru and talk down about her when she's not around. She makes vague threats towards people that make no sense. Why? Because of one funny joke from the original game. It's actually disheartening to see our characters get shafted in this manner. Wait, Persona 4 Arena, what are you doing here? If this is the modern interpretation of these characters, well then pardon me, I'm just an asshole on the internet, but I feel like they really missed the mark. Very few of these characters feel how they should. It's almost like I'm not playing with the same crew from FES or Portable. Like sure, they look the same, they sound similar enough and fulfill the same roles in the story as they did before, but they don't talk and act like how they should. They become one-dimensional facades of how one would perceive them on a surface level, rather than actual characters. And it gets even more bizarre because this changes on a dime when the narrative demands it. There is a group where this isn't the case, Strega. I won't say much about them due to avoiding story spoilers, but it was advertised quite a bit that there would be new scenes including them. The main focus of these new events is Takaya, the leader of the group. I truly believe that these new scenes further develop his character in a way that feels natural and realistic. I quite like these scenes. However, the new scenes end with a revelation that makes no sense. It feels like all of this development existed just for this payoff, but it doesn't offer anything of note. Like, come on guys, you almost had something here. You took one step forward and then took 2 steps back. To say a positive thing about the characters, all social link ranks are fully voiced. This adds a new portrayal and emotion to some of the scenes that just weren't present before. I think it really works, and I'd love to see Atlus continue this in the future. I'm sorry this point was so short, I truly do appreciate it, but there's not much to say about it unfortunately. Also, I forgot to mention this in the actual script, but it's actually a really good change, is the game doesn't force you to romance all female social links. This is something that FES and Portable did, and I'm very glad it's fixed here. As someone that's ace, I'm glad that they don't have to force romances on me now, and I can actually choose. It's very nice. I'm quite happy that they did that. I apologize for what may seem like an endless rant about characters. Let's just move on by talking about the story. The first big plus for this game is that the transphobia scene was removed, and we instead got a genuinely funny joke. I actually laughed at this scene, and I was so happy because now one of my favorite games isn't treating people like me as disgusting creatures. Unfortunately for us though, that's where the story positives go bye-bye. The changes to the story come with two very big negatives. The first of which was a problem that existed in Persona 3 Portable and was something that I harked on in my review of that game. In Portable, there were new lines added to help set the scene because the game had a compromised visual presentation. I mean, that made sense in theory, I guess. The game is now a flat 2D visual novel, relying entirely on the static character portraits and dialogue. So why in Christ's name are we using those same lines in a modern game that utilizes the third dimension? The same examples that I mentioned in my Portable review are still here in Reload and several others as well. Why are those lines in the script? They didn't exist in FES, so why are they here? Why did they add them? This is just one of those horribly mind-boggling decisions that really makes me question my entire existence. Like, it was so annoying and Portable and ruined a few scenes in that game where it was intended to be helpful. But now we have the intended visual context, so why are these lines here? Who the fuck wrote this game? The other major detriment to the story is entirely personal. Yeah, we're this far in and I'm just now admitting that my complaints are personal. Good job, me. This is what I'll call the October 4th and 5th effect. If you know the story, then you know what I'm referring to here. Without saying anything, these two in-game dates carry my favorite scenes in the entire game, and in FES would evoke a massive emotional reaction from me. When I played Reload though, I felt nothing. At first I thought something was wrong with me, so I decided to rewatch the scenes from FES, and I wept like a baby. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there is something about Reload's presentation that is horribly off. I don't know if it's the audio, the lighting, the new voice actors, the script, the actual framing and shots, something about Reload's presentation of important, thematic, emotional, story, and character moments fall completely flat on me. Playing this game, I felt nothing beyond mostly joy, amusement, and annoyance. Persona 3, at its very core, is a depressing, cold game. It's very down to earth in its themes and messages. People on the outside looking in often call it edgy. This grim appearance, somber narrative, and heavy themes are what drew me to it, and it's one of the many reasons that it's one of my favorite games. To be perfectly honest though, Reload's fumbled characters and presentation, whatever combination of aspects it may be, completely failed to get a reaction out of me. The fact that the original holds up better is truly shocking and frankly, disappointing. Think of all they could have done, but they just didn't. Persona 3 Reload isn't the game I had hoped for, and it, in my opinion, ruined one of the main appeals of the game. I don't hate Persona 3 Reload. The game is still Persona 3, it's still good. The gameplay is smooth, visually the game is beautiful, there's more to do, more features to play around with, and the social links are more engaging. As a whole though, I think the game fails at being on an even playing field as FES or Portable for me. The characters aren't themselves, the story falls flat when it really shouldn't, and the gameplay makes a ton of bizarre choices that just feel weird. Keeping on with my last Persona 3 review, I'm going to determine which is the optimal version. Everyone argues all the time about which is the definitive version of Persona 3, and if Reload will be that game for them. In my mind, Reload is the worst in all facets. When it comes to the story and atmosphere, Persona 3 FES has it beat. When it comes to gameplay, Persona 3 Portable has it beat. Seriously, if you want my honest recommendation, I truly argue that you pick up the $20 Persona 3 Portable that's available on all modern consoles over the $70 remake that I just spent an entire video venting about. That's my recommendation. Do with it what you like. It's truly unfortunate because I went into Persona 3 Reload with no preconceptions or expectations really. I just wanted a modern Persona 3 that I could enjoy. And while I do enjoy it, I know that there's a better version out there for me. The dungeon crawling, for all of its flaws I mentioned, is still super fun. The game is still fun and I'm glad I got to play it. With access to FES and Portable, I just don't know if I need to play a compromised version though. A version that ruined the characters for me, a version that ruined one of my favorite scenes in all of gaming. Persona 3 meant something to me. At least from playing Reload, I learned the hard way that the previous versions still do mean a ton to me. And I think that alone is the most telling thing that I've learned from all this. Well, that's all I have for you today. If you enjoyed the video, then please leave a like. If you're new to the channel and my video intrigued you, then I encourage you to subscribe. Or don't. I do this for fun, not for numbers. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed, and if you made it to this point, thank you for watching. Have a great one. Okay, bye-bye.